The topics and opinions expressed on the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4WN Radio, its employees, or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4WN Radio.
This is Beyond Confidence with your host, Divya Parekh. Do you want to live a more fulfilling life? Do you want to live your legacy and achieve your personal, professional, and financial goals? Well, coming up on Divya Parekh's Beyond Confidence, you will hear real stories of leaders, entrepreneurs, and achievers who have stepped into discomfort, shattered their status quo, and are living the life they want. You will learn how relationships are the key to achieving your aspirations and financial goals. Moving your career or business forward does not have to happen at the expense of your personal or family life, or vice versa. Learn more at www.divyaparekh.com, and you can connect with Divya at contact@divyaparekh.com. This is Beyond Confidence, and now here's your host, Divya Parekh.
Good morning. Such a pleasure to be with you all. So folks, thank you to all of those who have got our books, Entrepreneur's Garden, Expert to Influencer, and others, because in this month of March, which is International Women's Month and also Women's Recognition Month, I am humbled to say that with your help, we were part of Kiva's initiative where 20,000 women were helped. So if you're thinking that, oh, I buy one book, how is that going to help me? It does. Every little drop adds up and can become an ocean. So folks, thank you, thank you, thank you. And for those who are looking to grow your business or looking to become an influencer, get our books and also help others. And as always, I'm going to call upon you to give 1 hour of your time. No strings attached every month. Think about it, number of hours. If it's 100 million people, 100 million hours. Let's spread the word and the kindness. So I am going to invite our guest, Mark Lewis. Well, Mark.
Thank you, Divya. Good to see you.
Oh, good to see you. So Mark has been very, very successful. He's a former IBM employee, successful entrepreneur, and a nonprofit technology executive. He has coached entrepreneurs and small businesses and CEOs, yes, and we're talking about companies with employees, and he moderates multiple CEO roundtables around each year. He's a nationally acclaimed speaker. Excuse me. He's a nationally acclaimed speaker and best-selling author of Give a Damn, The Ticket to Cultural Change. And he has been featured widely on several TV stations, magazines, and outlets. And in 2005, he was selected by the governor of Louisiana as Technology Leader of the Year and was recently awarded the Marshall Klein Louisiana Entrepreneur of the Year Award. Congratulations, Mark.
Thank you, Divya. I'm excited. It's not all about me. It's about what you can do for other people. And when you do those kind of successes, you get rewarded for it. But I have to give credit to all the people that helped me get to where I am today.
Absolutely. So we usually start off with a moment in childhood. Do you recall a moment where you got into trouble or somebody left a mark on you where, oh yeah, I gotta be somebody like someone?
Well, when you say got into trouble, my sister, I have a twin sister. She was the one that usually got into trouble. I was kind of the one that passively was driven by the guidance of my dad. I think the thing that influenced me the most was when there was a situation, the newspapers weren't being delivered properly in the neighborhood. And at that time I was 13 years old, and I thought this was an opportunity to make a difference in people's lives. Growing up in Rochester, New York, it's pretty cold. So I made sure that the paper was delivered on time, and that really influenced kind of the springboard to my entrepreneurial life. And for 4 years, I was fortunate enough that I got newspaper boy of the year in Rochester, New York, and that kind of springboard. So I don't like to talk about troubles so much as I like to talk about what I can do that can make an influence on other people. And I did get into trouble, but it wasn't really anything significant.
Well, that's still precious. Childhood is precious, and it makes us who we are today. So tell us about your journey as your life continued. What brought you to become an entrepreneur?
Well, when I was younger, the newspaper route was part of it, but my dad got me involved in being I sold Christmas cards, I cut lawns, I did the kind of things that an entrepreneur would do at a very early age. And then I always knew that I wanted to be in business as an entrepreneur someday in my life. So I wanted to make sure I got the proper education. And when I graduated from Boston College and I went to Tulane, I knew I needed the training to really help me with that aspect of my life to be an entrepreneur. And I worked for IBM. Thought that I'd be there for about 2.5, 3 years, and then I would venture off into entrepreneurship. But I was pretty successful there, and I wound up being there for about 13 years. I had a family I had to raise, but then the itch really got significant for me, and IBM made some changes. So that was the springboard to leave IBM and then go into entrepreneurship. My first venture into it was pretty bad, actually, because I started with a guy that I knew that I really believed in his project. But after 2 months, I was out the door, had nothing to do. And then I started the internet company really by chance and by luck.
Oh, well, we all have such detours in our lives and all the journey. And as you became entrepreneur, I know you like to work with CEOs. What was it that drew you towards that?
Well, I generally had this need as a salesman for IBM to really help people with their wants and their needs. And so as I learned more about salesmanship and fulfilling those needs, I wanted to do it kind of at a higher level. That higher level was, well, if I could start a company and run a company and really provide those kind of aspects of fulfilling needs and wants and desires and making other people successful, then you in turn would be successful. So I gradually kind of moved up the scale to be able to do it. And then I was at the top of the scale, and I was able to make sure that we could do the kind of things that could be successful. And it was very rewarding, very, very fulfilling. And of course, you can't do it by yourself. You need to do it with other people. And I had the fortunate aspect of having other people in higher roles and letting them do their job that helped me become successful and the company successful.
Well, that's very powerful. So, what happens is that when you are a CEO, you're right there at the top of the food chain, so to speak. And it can be lonely. There are a lot of people, CEO should do this, CEO should do that. And because they're so lonely at the top, why do you think it is good for them to learn from other CEOs?
Well, you make a really good point. Lonely at the top. Who do I look to if I have a concern? And typically you could go to lower management, but who are the other people that are out there that can assist you and help you and provide you with good ideas? So when I started doing the CEO roundtables, I found that network of people engaging together to provide best practices, to provide ideas that you typically wouldn't get at a lower level, but get at the higher level and the executive level. And that sharing of information and best practices and collaboration and outreach really found it beneficial for CEOs to have a resource of other CEOs that they could choose and reach out to ask them specific questions that they normally wouldn't be able to get. And that's where that collaborative, what I call, it's almost like a board of directors that you can collaborate and work with other people and get their ideas that you can implement and make your company even more successful.
That's definitely right. It's, you said it, and nothing like having a group thing, because when you have a group of decision makers coming together, it creates that trusted environment where they can open up and where they can safely explore their business and personal issues. So there are so many times what happens is that CEOs work in the business rather than on the business. Could you give us some insight in that?
Yeah, in my several years of moderating roundtables, I've found out it's really a key ingredient. A lot of CEOs, when they start a business, they're involved in the day-to-day operations. That means what they're working in the business. They pretty much do everything. And then as you start growing and getting bigger, you can't do everything. And so sometimes CEOs get lost in oh, I can do this better than anybody else. But that is a fallacy. You can't think that way. You got to be able to delegate. So when you work on the business, it means you work on the strategies, the business development, what can be done from a strategic standpoint to develop the business further, and making sure that you're now doing the things that take this business to another level. It's called a paradigm shift. So typically, as you get bigger, you have to shift your thinking. And it's very difficult for entrepreneurs to be able to do that. Shift your thinking to working on strategies, business development, everything from a business functional standpoint that you delegate to other people, and you create those strategies, you monitor those strategies, and it involves a lot of different things to be able to get to that next level.
Absolutely. And that next level is always requiring additional work and additional strategy, because, as they say, professionals talk about logistics and strategy, and amateurs talk about tactics. So now, as they are developing their strategies, it's also important that using those strategies, they set the right goals. So tell us, what's a good way to set goals that they can be achieved? Not only set them.
Yeah, and one of the things first that any CEO might need to do before they set their goal is really to create a mission and a vision statement. Those are really key ingredients that everybody within the company can understand what the mission and the vision is. But after you set that mission and vision statement, goals are just probably the most important thing that a CEO can do. And these goals, and I think, have to be both personal and business. But when you set business goals, and it could be how much revenue are we going to generate over the next year, or what's our profit objective? What's our goal in terms of, do we reduce expenses? So when you set these goals, and I'm all about transparency, you communicate these goals to the employees within your company so they all can help you get to those goals, and then you monitor those goals. Goals have to be specific. They have to be SMART, what I call specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely. And then the key component on that is to make sure that you measure where you are relative to that goal, to those goals, and then you pivot accordingly depending on the economic environments and depending on a lot of other factors, and then you achieve those goals. And that's really important to do.
Absolutely, because what cannot get measured cannot be done and cannot be improved. So
That's
as
true.
we talk about it, the goals can be specific and SMART goals. What are a couple of elements that can make them such that the achieving of goals will be successful?
Well, I think it's about, from an achievement standpoint, is having all your employees be together. I think every employee needs a specific goal, and those goals are to be measured. So what you do is you come together as a family atmosphere, a cultural atmosphere that all agree that this is the goal we want to achieve. And then if you achieve that goal, what's really, really important is that you reward the employees for the achievement of that goal. So they're all part of it. And when they meet that goal, they get rewarded for it. One of the biggest goals that I think most entrepreneurs fail to realize is what we call the BHAG, which is a big, hairy, audacious goal. And that BHAG is typically 5 to 10 years out. Where do I want to be in 5 to 10 years? And how do we get there? So you let's say you do a 5-year goal. We're going to double our company in 5 years, and you work backwards. year by year to see what we need to do to get to that eventual BHAG. It could be an exit strategy, it could be whatever it may be, but the long-term goals, then the short-term goals, and then you measure them on a monthly basis to see where you are headed for those goals. That's really a key component in any company success.
That definitely makes sense. You hinted upon culture. So share with us what makes a good company culture.
Culture for me is such an important, I think it's the number one key in any business environment. And what you want to have is a culture where everybody works together. They're going towards a common goal. They're rewarded. They feel like they're part of an organization that can be successful. And I always say you have to have the right people within your organization, because if you have what I call a C player and you tolerate a C player, it's the best way to lose A players. Those people are really doing well. So you have to make sure that in every situation you have those A players that are working together with other players and A players in different functional areas, all working together. And there's so much that goes into the culture and hiring somebody that's so vastly important in the success of an organization. It's number one.
Absolutely. So now you brought up hiring. So that's fascinating how we are talking about different things and one thing leads into another and how everything is integrated and interconnected. So when you talk about hiring is such an important point, and so many times what happens is that people spend a ton of time and energy and money and interviewing people. You bring somebody on board and then you find that that person is not fit for the culture of that company. It's not that that person is not good, but it's not the right fit. So share with us a few techniques or tips that companies or people or leaders can use to hire the right people.
So Divya, I've been asked to go and interview potential hiring candidates for different companies. And so my main goal is I'm not so much concerned of what a person knows, because obviously if they're applying for that job, that they know what they're doing or have some knowledge in that field. I'm more concerned about how they think and how that thinking process fits into the culture of our organization. So I developed a very unique hiring technique that nobody can prepare for. And it's all based on how they think. And I have 5 different categories: personal, business, hobbies, sports, all that kind of thing. There's 5 categories. So I ask particular questions like this. So when let's say I'm interviewing you, Divya, I said, look, I want you to tell me the first thing that comes to your mind when I say 1 or 2 words. There are no right or wrong answers, but I'm going to say 1 or 2 things. And so I'll ask questions like favorite color, favorite movie, best actor, mom, dad, favorite car. Now, the whole process on this is to understand where they're thinking. So let's say a particular question is favorite movie, and someone says Aladdin versus the 10 Commandments. Well, it says something about them. If someone says favorite car and they say a Maserati versus a Camry, well, it says something about them. If they say favorite color is red versus blue, it says something about them. And so what happens is develop a pattern. And this pattern gives you the idea of how they're going to fit in your organization. It has been so successful, all these people, in terms of doing it. Nobody can prepare for it. You can understand what their stress level is. So if you ask a question, they start getting fidgety or they don't handle stress very well. You have all these elements that produce this pattern, and it works marvelously. And I have a lot of fun doing it too.
I think so. That is so powerful, because just as an example, if somebody were to pick, let's say Toyota RAV4 versus a Hummer, then it tells you that a person, and it's whether it's electrical car or a hybrid car, that are they environmentally conscious or things like that. So these are the little things in their life choices you can derive who they are as a person. So powerful, so simple, and yet powerful. So now we have talked about hiring. You have heard about the Great Resignations. 45 million people. No, what is it? 4.5 million, and more people have left. And that is a huge number. So let's say now you have hired the right people. What are the key strategies to retain them?
Well, when you hire the right people, you could hire the right person, but they could be in the wrong seat. So you want to make sure that it fits. When you hire somebody, they fit in the job that they really want. Because if you put somebody in the wrong seat, they're not going to be very happy. So making sure when you're hiring, you put them in the right seat. And I think sometimes in the company culture that people may be good for your company, but they're just in the wrong place. So you need to find and understand what makes them tick and what they need to do to enjoy what they're doing. But in terms of your question, and one point I did want to make that I didn't make, which is really sums up the hiring process, is you want to hire for culture, train for skill. And that's important. But getting to the point where what are the kind of different things that you want to do to keep people there? Well, first of all, you need to understand what makes them tick. And you want to have some kind of reward system based on the goals that they have. Everybody in the organization should have a goal. It doesn't matter whether you're a secretary or an accountant, but have a goal. When you set those goals and then you meet those goals, you reward them. But you also have these little things. Everybody ticks differently. What can I do as a CEO, get them to tick and reward them for what they're doing? A simple thank you in front of their peers, meeting quarterly on a basis and rewarding people for what they've done. It's something special. What happens is it builds camaraderie. It builds a sense of, boy, I belong. That belonging, you got to find a way that keeps people engaged and want to belong in a company. And everybody's different, and you got to find a way that finds that tick that keeps them engaged in the company. And I think if more CEOs did that, you wouldn't have this great resignation.
Well, you said it. You and I have talked on so many occasions, Mark. You always talk about that organization is so important. And when I'm talking about organization, not the organization as an enterprise, that it's important for people to be organized. And why is that?
Well, I think the success of a company is based on rhythm and structure. When you have structure in place and you have a rhythm in place, and that rhythm and structure coincides, then people understand what they need to do to make successful. It's like you could drive a car. If you're going to go to, let's say I'm driving from Baton Rouge to Vancouver, and you just get in your car and go, well, what path do I take? I mean, how do I know? Everybody has a path, and they drive that path to get to wherever they want to go. That's the path that people need to have in terms of structure in an organization to be able to meet their goals. Because when you have a goal, you got to have, what am I going to do to make this goal? And then, of course, if there's an accident in the road, you got to deviate from that path. Same thing. When you have rhythm and structure, you got to deviate the path in case something happens that you need to go around and then adjust accordingly, or what we call pivot accordingly. But structure and rhythm within an organization is the key really to success, and engages everybody.
Absolutely. So now you have talked about so many different areas. We have touched upon multiple areas. And now let's talk about some finances. We can have the soft skills, we can have everything. And yet there are so many companies that will not look at their finances and cash flow. So what are the key elements that the company should be looking at? And I'm not talking about the big companies, because
Sure.
The question would not be
well
relevant there. I'm talking about more like small businesses who are doing couple of millions.
Right. Well, I think it gets to monitoring your results. I mean, this is what we call key performance indicators. So you want to know what your KPIs are, and the KPIs can be financial. So every month you look at the finances, okay, where we are, where do we need to adjust, how are we doing in this area? And when you have a good feel of your finances, then you can make adjustments. Now, the finances should also be communicated transparent to the rest of the employees, because you may be doing something that you're not aware of, and you want to get feedback from your employees. I have this exercise called the start, stop, keep routine. What do we need to start doing that we're not currently doing? What do we need to stop doing that it's not being productive? And what do we need to keep on doing that's really good? If you engage your employees in that respect, and you get feedback, it's amazing how much feedback you get from your employees that can make your organization better. That'll translate to finances. That'll translate to organizational processes that you're implementing in your company. It'll translate into culture. All these things engaging to make your company better, I think is an important aspect of it.
Absolutely. So it's not just about having the checklist that I have my cash flow going well, I have my money in, money out, I have my financials. It's also important to taking that, because most of the companies, especially if you've reached $1 million or $1.5 million, you would have that. It's important to taking that and communicating and being transparent with your employees, because as you shared, you never know, you may find out where you could change some things and create more innovation. So definitely a great point. So now what's happening is, as we talked, circling back to the beginning, that it's so lonely at the top. How can CEOs come together? What kind of model is there?
Well, one of the things that have been implemented in Louisiana, which fortunately I've been a key part of, about 8 years ago, the state of Louisiana decided to implement what they call these CEO roundtables. And it was an organization, Entrepreneurs Organization of Louisiana, made the suggestion to the state that this might be something that they could implement that could be successful for them. And so they did a pilot test about 8 years ago. And fortunately, I was asked to be the moderator and the facilitator. And to be honest with you, Divya, I had never done this before, but I had experience as an entrepreneur and as a business person. So we put together a program, and we put that program to the state, and they agreed that this might be a good thing. So they did a pilot test in New Orleans, and it became very, very successful. For every dollar they invested into the program, they got an $8 return because of the growth that the companies realized based on what they learned from the CEOs in the roundtable and other business functions and strategies that people weren't aware of. So this is something I think needs to be implemented across small businesses, throughout the world, because it's demonstrated success over the last 8 years, and it's really helped the economic development of the state of Louisiana through the implementation of these roundtables.
So can you share with us a couple of stories, of course, maintaining all the confidentiality as to type of problems that were uncovered?
Well, we talked a lot about this already. The biggest problem people have in the CEO roundtable is hiring the right people. And the biggest problem that, I do an exercise within the CEO roundtable, and the question is, everybody has a decision to make, but they put off making this decision for whatever reason. They know they have to make it, but it's just a tough decision to make. So I force them to do it. I force them. They have to come back and say, what decision did you make that you've been putting off for so long that you've now made, and what effect did it have? So I force them to make it. It might be like implementing a payroll. It might be firing somebody. It might be whatever it may be, but they came back and made that decision. And every single time that they make a decision they've been putting off, their main comment was, boy, I wish I had done that years ago or months ago. So we have to learn how to make decisions. We don't want to hurt anybody, but it's what's in the best interest for the company and the employees in making that decision.
Absolutely. That definitely makes sense. So tell us all this knowledge that you have pulled together, and how are you taking that and creating a pathway for others?
Well, it's interesting you bring that up. Based on my experience over the last 8 years in putting together a roundtable series, I decided that I wanted to create a CEO playbook. What could I put together that business leaders could help other CEOs implement a program? It's like a playbook that a coach has, whether a basketball coach or a football coach. Every coach typically has a playbook, an implementation strategy per se. And I've developed 10 sessions over a year where people would all get together, CEOs would get together through a facilitator and implement this playbook. And it starts off with mission and vision statement, goal setting, best practices in human resources, financially speaking, lean organization. And I know I've left out a couple, but this playbook is designed to help CEOs implement strategies. But you know what's best about this? They get together 10 sessions out of the year and they collaborate on all these different business functions together. And they learn so much from other CEOs, what they can come back and implement. They also learn about how to handle certain situations that other CEOs have successfully handled. And it's just been a godsend. So I decided to say, look, well, we need more of this. We need to put this together so other CEOs can implement it and be successful and help them accelerate their growth.
And that definitely sounds like you have taken all your experience and synthesized a pathway and a formula for people so that companies can succeed. And especially now more so than ever, it's important for the companies to succeed, bring in more profits, have their employees grow more. So as we're talking about that, tell us a couple of stories around how long did it take you and what went into it?
Well, you know, I've made my share of mistakes, right? In my entrepreneurial years. So I wanted to have the ability to share my experiences and what I've done as an individual, and then hopefully transpire this knowledge into strategies and success mechanisms for other CEOs and other business leaders to implement. So, you know, in my life, I've been very fortunate. I've had a lot of great direction, a lot of training. My dad has been very influential in what I've done. And why can't I take these shared experiences, what I've done, to help other CEOs become more successful and accelerate their growth? And you know what the satisfaction I have in a couple of situations where the CEOs were involved in the roundtable, they had a specific exit strategy. And going back, they established their BHAG is that they wanted to double the company and then sell the company. Well, that came to fruition. And I said, well, you need to do this in a way that increases the value of your organization so you can get the best possible price when you sell it. So if you implement the strategies and go down this line, you're going to increase the value of what your company would be worth for somebody who didn't do that. And I know there's two situations where that happened, and it certainly made their life obviously better, but it helped them meet their objectives. So those are the kind of things that got very self-fulfilling and very strategic and very satisfying for me, that I made a difference in someone's life.
Absolutely. Nothing like making a difference in someone's life. So tell me, you've always talked about your dad. Share a few things that have left a mark on you.
Well, you know, unfortunately, my dad passed away recently. He was 93, but my dad was tough. It's called tough love, you know, and so what you want to do is, when I do some of the things for other CEOs, I think about the tough love that my dad gave me, and understanding that some of these things, geez, I just didn't want to do it. I want to go down the easy route. I wanted to do this, but he taught me over and over again how important it is to do strategies. But most importantly, he taught me what it would be like to have empathy for people, understanding what their needs are, fulfilling those needs, giving them direction, giving them recommendations of what they need to do differently, or recommending them to other people. Everything was involved about what can I do to help someone succeed based on the knowledge that I've received, which my dad gave me, and how can I pass it on to make other people successful. And that's been strategic for me, and it's really kind of been driven my whole life. And I can't thank my dad enough. It's funny because he was a consultant, and I never thought I'd go into the consulting world. I never thought I would do what I did because I worked for IBM, and that was a full-time job. But he did, and I eventually followed in his footsteps. And if you told me that when I was a kid, I would have said I would have never thought that was possible.
Yeah, sorry for your loss. It doesn't matter how old they are, they leave a gap in your life that can never be filled. So Mark, as you kind of continue to move along, You also mentioned that you have a book around Give a Damn. Can you tell us something more about it?
Divya, I have, if you told me 10 years ago I was going to write a book, I would have said, God, you're absolutely crazy. I didn't like English when I was growing up. I don't write very well, and I don't read because I'm so active that, I'm not a big book guy. But I found something going in society that really disturbed me. And that was how society has become very self-centered, meaning they have this what's in it for me attitude. And some of the things that I saw and what people were doing, I'm going, are you serious? Are you really doing that? And I decided that I was going to dictate everything I saw and write it down. And then I got all this data. And I said, well, I might as well write a book about it. And I wanted to find out what was really causing and driving this change in attitude of a self-serving society versus a selfless society. And I came across a lot of aspects, and it's really been the driver for me to help companies succeed. It's give a damn, to take it to cultural change. What can we do to change the culture of an organization to make it better and to get away from the self-serving society? And it's driven me to be able to get that word out to other people and say, if you really care, if you understand what you do and what you can put into what you can do to help other people, you're going to get something in return. But the fallacy is people shouldn't think about, oh, I'm going to do this for what's my benefit. I'm going to do it because it's the best interest of what I'm doing for that person. And guess what? You always will get something in return, but you can't expect it. It will come. You can't expect it. So that's been kind of my driver. It's my theme. It's really what I engage in, a cultural society, cultural business. And it's kind of a driver for what I'm doing for the CEO roundtables too.
And that makes perfect sense about the driver, that it's important. We have become so entrenched in this digital that where people were so much more engaged with each other. Yes, there would be siblings who, and this reminds me of a story. I was talking to someone and the gentleman was sharing that he comes home from work and he finds that his kids are giggling and nobody's talking. And he goes and checks in the living room, and what he finds is that they're texting to each other. And yes, it's a form of communication, and yet it's so important that you look in somebody's, looking at somebody's body language, looking in someone's eyes, and having that direct conversations. And from there onwards, what he did was he went ahead and called a family meeting, and they had a rule that at least on the dinner table, no gadgets would be allowed. So we talk about gadgets, and now as we are talking about the CEO roundtable, CEOs have to be available constantly. It's so hard for them to unplug and just be unavailable. So how does having the gadgets in the roundtable work?
Well, when we do our roundtable, the gadgets are set aside, because this is an interactive. And you make a really good point about technology, Divya, in the standpoint that these gadgets have allowed us to communicate more, but the quality of those communication has been severely degraded because we're not interacting like we did as human beings before all these gadgets. And so you lose that sense of touch and lose that understanding in the nonverbal communications. And I think that's been a critical aspect of what's happened in today's society is that we have the communication, but we're not communicating face to face. I remember, we got to go visit people. Now they text people. Instead of calling them, they'll text them or they'll email them. I think that face-to-face communication has been a huge degradation in the form of communication. Interaction has caused people to be, I think, in this sense, more selfish in that standpoint. But technology has been a problem from that perspective. And the gadgets in terms of the CEOs, obviously you want people within your organization to have the ability to reach a CEO. But if you don't, you got to cut back because there's certain levels of interaction that the CEO can't do these strategies of working on the business if they keep getting interrupted all the time. So the delegation that say, hey, go to your boss, and that might not be it's not the CEO, but go to them. but give them the empowerment to do the kind of things that they need to do for the company without them having to come to you. And if they do something that's wrong, hey, you empower them and they learn from it. It can't be something really drastic, like changing a strategy, but simple things that you empower employees, which is a key strategy too, to do the kind of things that's in the best interest of the company is important without them having to come to you for everything, a little bit that they need.
Absolutely, because when you are doing succession planning, that's how you groom the incoming person, that they're able to do the job that they would be taking on maybe a couple of years or 2 years or 3 years. And that's where delegation is so critical. So share with us how people can reach out to you and if they're interested in the CEO playbook, because definitely from what you have shared, people could take that playbook and start their own roundtables. So where could they connect with you?
Thanks, Divya, for asking that question. You know, I have a website. It's Mark Lewis, Lewis, LLC.com. You can see it at the bottom of your screen there. And I have different aspects. I've got my book up there. I've got the facilitator playbook, the CEO playbook that people can learn about what goes into that. I've got other aspects that, I do some consulting work as well. But the whole point on this is my driver is to help other CEOs succeed, but also have business leaders who are in the same position I am to take this playbook and implement it with other CEOs and create their own roundtable so they can help other CEOs succeed and accelerate the growth of their business. So that's a key component and driver for me, is to really help small businesses get to another level through business leaders who will implement a CEO roundtable for the benefit of their small business.
Absolutely. So now if you were to leave our audience with few tips that they can take and implement in their lives, what might those be?
Well, the first couple things comes to mind when you hire somebody. We talked about this: hire for culture, train for skill, making sure that CEOs work on the business versus in the business. When you're younger, typically you do that work in the business. And always think about what you can do to help other people succeed, with the idea that eventually it's going to benefit you. Because if you do these kind of things, you actually reduce your stress level. When you think about the things that you do for other people and it makes you feel good and makes them feel good, stress is a key detriment to the human body. If you can reduce that stress, and I've got a lot of statistics in my book that shows these kind of things actually reduce stress and you live longer, because when you do these kind of things that put a smile on your face, put a smile on the face of other people, everybody benefits, everybody lives longer. It's amazing what the human body will do when you do these kind of happy things for other people. It's just unconditionally unbelievable what effect it has. Those are the kind of tips that I would leave with everybody.
Absolutely. That is fantastic. And are you ready for some of the hot seat questions?
Yeah. Okay. We'll do it. Sure.
So some fun. Let me ask you, what's your favorite color?
Blue.
Definitely. That came right off the bat.
Yeah.
So let's say if you were to pick Mars or Venus, where would you go? And why?
If I were to pick what? I'm sorry.
If you were to pick one planet to go, Mars?
One planet to go? I would probably go to Mars, only because it's closest. And I hear so many things about what's going on in Mars. That would be kind of cool.
Absolutely. And if you were given one superpower that you could get, which one would it be? Flying, getting invisible?
Boy, that's a good question. So my superpower would be to heal all the diseases in the world so everybody could live happily. I think that would be my superpower. Just let everybody not have any disease. I think that's the first thing that comes to mind.
Oh, yes, and absolutely. Because I can definitely share that when you're feeling healthy, you can tackle anything, everything. So what a wonderful wish for everyone. And is there any last words of wisdom you'd like to share?
No, I just want to say, thank you to you, Divya, for having me today. I would hope that some of my experiences might help improve the lives of other people. And I'm just looking forward to making a difference, significant difference in this world, to help improve it, to get people to give a damn about other people and how important it would be. And it just help society be more selfless versus selfish would really vastly improve the world today. And that's just kind of my driver at this point.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Mark, for so openly sharing your wisdom with us, because I'm sure that the listeners have got a ton of information and a lot of value. So thank you for joining us. And of course, listeners, without you, the show would not be possible. So thank you for everything that you'll do for us. And thank you, Jason, for the technical support.
Thank you, Divya. You were terrific. I appreciate you.
You were terrific too, Mark. I really appreciate you as well. Thank you, folks. And we'll see you next time. Be well. Take care.
Thank you for being part of Beyond Confidence with your host, Divya Parekh. We hope you have learned more about how to start living the life you want. Each week on Beyond Confidence, you hear stories of real people who have experienced growth by overcoming their fears and building meaningful relationships. During Beyond Confidence, Divya Parekh shares what happened to her when she stepped out of her comfort zone to work directly with people across the globe. She not only coaches people how to form heart connections, but also transform relationships to mutually beneficial partnerships as they strive to live the life they want. If you are ready to live the life you want and leverage your strengths, learn more at www.divyaparekh.com. And you can connect with Divya at contact@divyaparekh.com. We look forward to you joining us next week.